Hey, you guys, I am so excited that you decided to join me today on Tiffany's Take. I am going to be talking to an amazing woman named Pat Smith, who has raised four wonderful children, and she's married, and she decided to homeschool her kids. I thought it would be awesome to bring her on with her wealth of knowledge about homeschooling to talk to us, to give us some good advice on making a tough decision during this time of whether to send our children back to school, to teach them, have them learn online, or to take on the challenge of homeschooling ourselves. I know it's a bit scary. That's why I want to talk to her, because if anyone has any knowledge about how to go about this, it would be her. So I'm so excited. Let's get into it. I'm Tiffany, and this is my take. Hey everybody, so right now I have with me Miss Pat Smith, and I'm going to allow her an opportunity to introduce herself at this time. Go ahead, Pat.
All right, so the first thing is I'm a follower of Christ and I love the Lord. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I am a home educator, and I work part-time, and I'm also in college, so got a lot going.
That is a lot. I'm learning something already. I didn't realize that you were in school. That is awesome. Now I have, before we really get into everything, or
Sure.
I know that you homeschooled everybody, but do you still have one more still? Is Seth still homeschooling?
That's Keenan. Keenan's the
Keenan.
youngest.
Oh, I said Seth. Lord have mercy, not the oldest. Don't have Seth get me.
Yeah, and actually, I only homeschooled the oldest, which is Piper, approximately 3 years.
Okay.
The story within itself, but yeah, but everyone else have always been homeschooled.
Oh, awesome. Oh, Lord, they're going to kill me because I get the order mixed up all the time.
Yeah.
So Piper is the oldest.
Piper, Seth, Summer, and Keenan.
Look. My bad, y'all. I love you all the same. I'm pretty sure you get it all the time.
Yeah, they do. That's all right, though.
It's the height, Piper. That's what it is. It's all about the height. That's taller, so I just automatically, my bad, girlfriend. You're amazing.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into it with the first question of why did you decide to homeschool?
Okay, the decision came, and it actually is something I've always been open to, and I'm not even really sure how I began to be open to it. But we had sent Piper to a Christian school, and well, first of all, I taught her how to read before she was in kindergarten, so she was probably reading at a second, third grade level before she entered kindergarten. And then when funds got really tight, Danny said, well, why don't we just homeschool? And so we brought her home for 2 years. But in any event, in my mind, as I began to think about it, why do I want to homeschool? It's because I want to teach my kids a biblical worldview. And that can be very deep. And so every subject, and it doesn't matter, because if God created everything, then everything that he created, we are either discovering, or God has put into his creation for us to investigate, to learn, etc. And we do all those things to turn back around and give him praise. And we give him praise through how we work, so our kids, or even myself, if I'm going to be a serious learner, a serious thinker, I'm going to think according to truth. And so the truth is God's word. And so that's why, because I want to teach them a biblical worldview. And I want to differentiate between homeschooling and teaching, or teaching at home, or I think it's what people are calling it now since this whole COVID thing.
Yeah, please explain.
Yeah. So teaching at home, I guess, if you will, is if you already have your curriculum from the school, whatever school you're in, your public school, they may be doing internet or whatever, or videos. I'm not really sure how the teachers are doing it, but So you're still using everything that the school provides. However, homeschooling is when, in my case, and maybe in other people's cases, where we said, no, I want to be the leader, if you will, in this education. So I kind of think of it according to Deuteronomy 6, you know,
Okay.
where God told Moses, you know, to teach your children. Well, and he was speaking to them in the midst of a believing community, right?
Right.
And so you have families teaching their children about God. Well, teaching about God is not simply me reading the Bible by itself, but teaching from God's word everything in the created order, because
Right.
nothing came into existence by itself. And so I wanted to teach my kids that God is sovereign, that he created everything. And so through all this, through art, through history, through math, through languages, etc., we bring it all back to God. We give him praise for who he is. And it just shows how amazing and great God is. And so teaching from that perspective. And then, yeah, so there's a lot more that could be said, but just kind of a nutshell.
Okay, that is awesome. I think that's very good to differentiate too, especially with everything that is going on, because it can be confusing when you don't, when all you know is my kids are learning and they're learning at home versus I am taking this curriculum and I'm teaching my children versus the school taking the curriculum and my kids learning. So I think that's very good to differentiate so that people can have a clear understanding, because I know that we are struggling at this time with different decisions and having a complete understanding of what's what. You know, you can accidentally unenroll your child from school by saying the wrong thing. That's what it seems like you're saying to me. And I know some of us don't want that. We just want to keep our kids safe during this time and still have the curriculum from the school. So that's awesome. As we are going into this and starting out with this, I know the next question that's on a lot of people's mind is, do you have to be degreed in order to teach your kids from home?
Okay. Well, okay.
I mean, to homeschool. Let me
to homeschool. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So sticking with the focus on homeschooling. So as a home educator, as a mom, I chose the curriculum, right?
Okay.
And we won't get into all that right now, but I chose the curriculum based on its presentation of truth.
Okay.
And you know, I can get into science and things like that, but not something that speaks about evolution, but something that speaks about God creating everything and so forth and so on. So anyway, I'll say your question one more time because I lost the question there. Say it one more time.
I was asking, I had to correct myself. Do you have to be degreed in order to homeschool your children?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, no, you don't. And that's one of those things where it can be very intimidating. So when I chose to or my husband and myself chose to homeschool our kids, and bear in mind, I did the lion's share of the teaching because Danny worked so that I can do this, right? So, but I was just a high school graduate. And the one thing that I would encourage moms and dads is that you know more than your kids, right? If you have gone through 12th grade, you know more than your kids. And so the curriculum that I actually chose curriculum that, you know, from the presentation of the truth, that is, God is the truth. And I chose curriculum that actually taught me, the teacher, how to teach. And so curriculum that was very instructive. And so that helped me. And also some other things that we did, we got into cooperatives at a certain point. So I pretty much taught my kids from, I guess, I didn't really use grades so much, but 1st through 6th grade. And then we started getting into cooperatives. And typically parents who join cooperatives, they will be teaching those classes. So some parents may have gotten their degree, like some of the ladies mostly who taught my kids in cooperatives, they had a degree in a certain field of study. I did not. I just had a passion. And so my passion that I taught was history and government, but I always studied. And in fact, I'm going to college right now for government and political study because that's my passion, and also history. And so I taught kids American history and government. So I mostly taught high school, but I studied beforehand. So I prepared and I researched, etc. And so, no, you don't. And answer your question, you do not have to have a degree.
Okay.
Some parents do, you know.
Now, you spoke of cooperative. Is that like, what kind of community is that? Is that a community that you created, or is it something that can be found online? Like, how do parents who are choosing a homeschool, how do they find this cooperative network? How do they do that?
Oh my gosh, it's so much out there. So, okay, and so some things that I did as well, and I'm going to do this year as an example. One of Keenan's classes, it will be online. So he will actually be here in the living room or in his bedroom during the class. But as far as cooperatives, you can go online and look up homeschool cooperatives in Kansas City or wherever you might be. And so you'll see some names come up, and you can just click on there and just find information about that particular cooperative. And so there are some cooperatives. Hopefully I can talk more about some specific ones at another interview.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, and that along with curriculum. But yeah, you can find just some excellent cooperatives. And I'll name one of them that we were involved in. It was called Classical Conversations. Excellent, excellent, rigorous.
Okay.
And there was another one as well. So there's so many opportunities, so much information out there that parents can gain just from looking on the internet and finding these places. And then of course you contact them, they let you know their prices or whatever they're going to charge to educate your student or to help you, because they keep parents in charge. And even as a parent, I could give my input. Why don't we use this particular curriculum? So things like that. So they keep parents in charge. And as a parent, other things that go along with that, you are in charge of, you're responsible for keeping records, keeping that sort of thing. So I even made my kids, what do you call that thing when they graduate?
A certificate? You made the diploma?
No, not a diploma. Oh my gosh, I cannot think of the name of it. What? Sorry. No, I can't think of it. Well, never mind. I'll think of it next time.
Okay.
But anyway, it's something that you need in order to, if you're going to go to college. Transcript.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, I even completed my kids' transcript. So, and well, two of my kids are in college, and then one is about to go back to school. But I did a transcript, so, except for Piper, my oldest. So.
Oh, see, and transcripts, now that's one of the things that freaks me out about that, because that I was homeschooled for a short period of time. I was homeschooled through 6th through 8th to my 8th grade year, and I went in like after 8th grade started. And being a kid, I didn't understand that, but my mother created my transcript, and I know that's gonna have to be a whole nother conversation. We're gonna have to fit that in with the curriculum, because I know within itself, like my mother trying to gather information and all of that and the proof of my studies, I'm pretty sure that that's something that needs a little bit more time as well to talk about that, so that parents can understand what it's like to generate that transcript, so that they can see that their kids have learned and been able to produce that to show school, so that their kids can go to college. Because I know right now London is in 8th grade. So if I were to choose to homeschool and making that transition, having the transcript for her to go from 8th grade to high school, if I wanted her to go back to a public school, I could only imagine what that would be like.
And typically those transcripts, as you're considering college, you're only looking at 9th through 12th grade. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's going to be on the transcript. Although some classes that a couple of my kids took, they were in 8th grade, but it was really a 9th grade class or something like that. You know, you could still put that on your transcript. And so, but like you said, hopefully we can get into that in another interview. But yeah, so I did all that. And like I said,
wow.
one of my kids, Summer, well, she's in college, and so from that transcript, she also had a couple of awards, scholarships type thing, you know. So yeah.
I think that is so awesome. So as we talk about this, and I know it's so much, and I feel like I'm gypping the people from getting more information from you, but I'm so excited that you'll do this again. I want to know, what were some of the challenges that you had in starting out with homeschooling?
Okay. Well, that's a great question. Now, because I'm kind of a perfectionist, which it slows me down and all that good stuff. I like things to be in order. I like things to be perfect. Well, throw it out the window. It's not gonna be perfect, you know. So you always have a plan. Always have a plan of what you're going to do, and you stick to that plan. But you do know when you homeschool, you are life schooling as well. So life happens. Right?
Oh, you got to say that again, because that was a jewel right there. I think you need to say that one little portion again so that everybody can hear that.
Yeah, so when you homeschool, you are life schooling as well.
Wow.
Life happens. Somebody could get sick. I could get sick. I may have to have someone has an appointment, etc. So you work around that. So I think that was probably one of the most challenging things for me, is because of just my mindset is I want things done. If it's A starts, I want A to go and B, C, etc. And sometimes we did not get to a particular subject on that day. Sometimes I had to double up the next day, the whole shebang. And I worked part-time at times. I worked seasonal at times, overnight.
Wow.
But it was such a passion for me to instill in my kids a biblical worldview, and having Danny's support and having his input with them. It was such a passion, and I was willing to lose some sleep. That was just that trade-off, is I wanted them to understand the worldview that Christ is Lord, and everything that we're involved in, we want to make sure that we understand that God made this. You know,
yes.
I'm a if one of my kids love biology, well, look at the intricacy of how God has made this particular animal, how great He is, and so we do that and we give praise back to Him. So yeah, so that was my greatest challenge. It's mostly myself. It's not going to be perfect. So throw that thing out the window. Not going to be.
Trust me, I understand, because I'm finding it challenging right now to look at the camera as if I'm looking at you, because I want to look at you, and then I keep on forgetting that people can't see you in the angle that I'm looking.
Right.
So talk about challenges and being a perfectionist. It's like, oh, I can't go back. I can't fix this. I'm stuck at the angle that I am, but this is such good stuff, and I'm so excited. I love that. I think that's important, that people understand that you're not going to be perfect. And like you said, I'm a perfectionist as well, and trying to go from point A to point B to point C in the order in which I wanted to go, just in parenting. I think that's something that we need to understand, that it is not going to be perfect, right? Like, I think that, like you said, it's that life lesson all the way around. Like, you're not going to be perfect all the time. And I mean, getting sick, yes, how did you handle that? How did you handle when you got sick or one of the kids get sick? Like, what was that like?
I just juggle, you know, and thankfully I didn't get sick hardly at all. But like if one of the kids got sick, well, I know that either I can move this lesson to another time, or if I could somehow combine it with another one, or if maybe this is something that we don't necessarily need right now, we can just go on. And so I just do it that way. And another thing I wanted to say that's kind of attendant to that is that parents need to remember that all their kids are different, right? So they all have different learning aptitudes. One of the misconceptions I had in my mind, which was a pride thing, and I thank God that he got me over that, is, okay, if I homeschool my kids, they're just going to be brilliant. Well, no, you can have a brilliant person no matter where they are. You can have a brilliant child, a student in any school. That's not the focus. The focus is to challenge that child to work his or her hardest in who God has made them to be, right? That Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as unto the Lord and not unto men. So that scripture, so just challenge them to do their best. And I know my kids, so I know that with this one child, your best is an A. So I'm going to be saying, hey, you need to be focused and pushing it. This other one, his or her best might be a B. But the thing is, it's not to make this, okay, yeah, A is great, and I want my kids to get A's, and they pretty much got either all A's and some B's or that sort of thing. But each child has a different learning aptitude, and so therefore, just push them, challenge them to do their best. Do their best. Yeah, and that's all you can do.
And I think that's valid. I think what you're saying is so significant because as parents, I think we look at our children and we think, oh, I've raised my child this way, or I've seen this one in school, and I know how this pattern was, and so why aren't you producing this way? And I know that with me working in the field of education as a substitute teacher, I know so often, like, you see siblings and they're quick with it and they understand too, and it's like, no, I'm not my sister, I'm not my brother. I know you think that this one is so much smarter than me. And it's like, no. One of the things that I tell kids when I enter into a classroom, especially when they have siblings, because I've been doing this for so long. I've been substitute teaching for 15 years. So what I've realized is that I've learned to look at each child, and I tell teachers in the school to look at my children as individuals.
Right.
They're not going to be the same. As much as you would think, yes, they all came from the same household, and yes, I understand that this one child rolls her eyes and this one is as sweet as pie. I get it. But guess what? They're both, and all three of them are amazing children and amazing people in their own way. And I think we just have to figure that out. And I didn't have that written down here, but you hit the nail on the head, because I was going to ask that, because being homeschooled, and at the time it was 6 of us, and I don't know how my mother didn't pull her hair out, honestly.
Right.
Because there were moments where it's like, excuse me, did you no 2 + 2? And it's like 5. No. And then you got this one who is not on their grade level, and they're like 2-3 grade levels ahead, and trying to maneuver. Like, I am in awe of that. And it just amazes me how, like, in conversation, and like you talking about your children and the different things that you have come across and the challenges and all of that. And that's why I thought that's why I believe that you were the perfect person to do this, because you get that. And I think that is very important, if parents realize that their children are different, right?
Yeah. And I want to say this too, Tiff. So going back to that scripture, right? Colossians 3:23, whatever you do. So that gets to a moral issue. So the whole idea of education is to, as classical conversation puts it, to know God and to make him known. And so we know God through these various disciplines, whether, like I say, whether it's science or history or politics, etc., language arts or whatever it is. So we are discovering, what God has put into his created order. And so that discipline of studying hard and getting into this particular subject and just being in awe of God. And so the idea is that, no, this is a moral issue that you work hard, that you don't half step. Why? Because the idea is to know the Lord, to see what he has done. And so it is really about raising children that would honor God. Now, of course, them honoring God ultimately is God's business, but my role as a mom, as a parent, is to raise them for that particular purpose. And so education, teach them, like the Bible says, teach them. Well, you're going to teach them more than, the Bible is the foundation, and it's throughout everything. But you're going to have to be able to get into these particular subject matters and point back to Christ, because what you want are good children, not in good in the sense that we're good, because we're fallen sinners, but in the sense that Christ is good. And when he enters the heart and the life, we have his goodness, and we're able to understand beauty and truth. Why? Because he's the truth, etc. So that's the whole thing. Work hard because it honors God.
Awesome. I love that. So now we talked about the challenges. So let's get to the advantages. What were the advantages of homeschooling your children?
Oh, well, I think, the first advantage, again, is just teaching that biblical worldview. And that's just my thing. Just living in this world and knowing, who God is and what he has done. And then the other thing is, it's just being with my kids. I love being with my kids. I mean, I've just loved it. And they enjoy each other, so they were able to be with each other. When he was on a vacation, whatever, well, they were here and he's here, and, so they can, that's when school kind of fell apart when he came home, because they didn't want to, that's when the lessons kind of dissolved at that point, because they wanted to hang out with their dad. But just being with them. And so we are still to this point, and I have all adults. And so, and my young adult is 16. That's the youngest one. But we are still where we can talk about anything. And I don't care what it is, whether all the things going on in culture, whether it's transgender, whether it's whatever it is, evolution, etc., whether it's a problem that they're having. So that's the advantage, is just building that relationship. And by God's grace, they're still very respectful. Now, sometimes they get off and they're disrespectful.
No, not your children. They don't do that.
Yes, on some occasions, but it's mostly respect and honor. But yeah, they get off track sometime, and I have to get in. I get off track sometimes. So.
Oh, we all.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's probably the best thing, and also the things that they were interested in. We could do those things, like we could go here to this park or to this museum, or I can send my daughter to piano lessons at this lady's house or at Calvary Bible College, or whatever the case may be, or they could be in this sports team over here, because so all those things where I was in the driver's seat. And so, that to me was the most advantageous of it,
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that is really good. So, because I don't think people really understand that there are different groups where you can do activities as a homeschooler.
Right.
So, like, can you touch on that a little bit? Like with field trips and different things like that, and doing sports and being in high school and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, so with your different activities, so you may have a child who's interested in, say, karate or robotics or things like that. Well, there's always going to be a group somewhere especially with all the homeschooling that's going on right now. And so they can get into that various activity. Now with field trips, we typically went on those. Well, sometimes if it was just me and my kids, we might get together with another family. But when we got into cooperatives, then their whole like seventh grade class might go to a particular field trip. So the one thing I want to do the next time is kind of talk about those cooperatives, because they are just very, very helpful. And it takes a lot of pressure, a lot of stress off dads and moms, who are homeschooling their kids. And like I say, most of the time, in most situations, it's the mom who's doing the lion's share. Why? Because dad's out there, he's working so she can do this, so she can be at home. So but there's all kind of groups. My oldest daughter, she took piano lessons at Calvary Bible College when I was homeschooling her. My other daughter went to a lady's house who did piano lessons. The lady herself was a graduate from Calvary Bible College. And also she was involved in some sports team. They have homeschool sports teams. And one of the young men that I taught in one of my classes, he's a dancer, but he's also, he's a football player and a dancer.
Okay.
but he is tall, extremely handsome, muscular, etc. So he's going to go to school actually in Mississippi. One of his, he's going to go there for dance, but he's also going to go for something else, something very heady. It's some kind of science or something like that.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So, there's so many avenues, so many different things to get into. Even that itself can be overwhelming because there's so many choices.
And that's good to know, because I think parents need to know that there is an avenue for their kids, even though they're choosing to homeschool them. Because I know when I was being homeschooled, I'm not going to say how many years ago that was, but I can tell you that the different opportunities that they have now, it was nothing like that for us. Right. At least we weren't exposed to it, And I remember talking to my mother when my youngest brother was being homeschooled, and he was playing on a football team. And I'm like, what? They didn't have football when I was in when I was being homeschooled. They didn't have any kind of sports or different things like that. And he was going on field trips and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, why does everything get better when you get older and you're no longer involved?
Right. Yeah.
I was like, that is so not fair. And my mother was like, as the oldest of 7, I've heard it from all of your other siblings as well. Time improves and changes things, and let's be thankful to God that it does.
Right. Amen.
And I was like, okay, fine, mommy, whatever. It's still not fair. So as we go on and we talked about the different advantages, what were some of your favorite things about homeschooling, and what was your least favorite thing about homeschooling?
Oh man, so I'm gonna start with the least first. So least was kind of getting into it. So when we first started, so this is all new to me, bear in mind, I did not know anything about it. And so it's just a vision I had in my heart. But it got kind of difficult, especially with them being young and being inside the house quite a bit. And I think mostly that was because I needed a learning curve of how to structure my time, how to get them, on their subjects and things like that. But once we kind of got into a flow and we began to learn of different things going on, then that kind of opened it up. So I think that was probably my least favorite, but it was because I was new and I didn't know. And then my favorite thing about it again was just the opportunities, the just being with them, the different things that we could do, the flexibility. So, and just being able to meet other homeschooling parents and families and things like that. So, I mean, I've just loved that. And that's just been a blessing. Yeah.
Then, so as we talk about that and we go from your favorites and your least favorites, what is some advice that you would give someone who is trying to make a decision at this time to possibly homeschool or teach their kids from home with still having the school as a curriculum, but they don't feel equipped to do it? So what would be some advice to those people?
Okay. Well, again, if it is in your heart, if it is a passion for you to do that, that's going to be the most important thing, because that passion is going to give you the stick-to-itiveness. That's going to be your drive. And so as far as not thinking that you can do it, well, it's going to be new. So you're going to have to give yourself a learning curve, first of all. And then also, once you get your curriculum and things like that, once you get that, just have a plan. Have a plan. Try to stick to your plan. Just like when you make a to-do list. Sometimes you get to everything, sometimes you don't. And so then if you don't get to it today, you have to move it to tomorrow. But stick to your plan as best as you can. It's something that you can do, especially, again, if you have a passion, if you have a drive to do it, you will do it because you want to do this for your kids. And so that's my best advice. And you're going to feel inadequate. I felt inadequate. I still feel inadequate, which is a good thing because it keeps me pressing forward, I think. So, yeah. And always, if you have questions, reach out to someone who who homeschools, or there's
or go to YouTube.
Yeah, there you go. Or go to YouTube. Yeah. And there is, I think,
like, comment, subscribe.
There you go. Yes. And there, and there are homeschool groups, or like Homeschool Legal Defense Association, I think it's called, Missouri Home Educators. Go to those websites, get advice, get information. So there's a lot out there. And so just be encouraged. Be encouraged and, just do your best.
Yeah, I think that's amazing what you just said about feeling inadequate. I never looked at it from that perspective of feeling inadequate can push you forward. So often we look at inadequacy as a way to stop us, as a way to prevent us from doing those things. But the way that you word it gives me a whole different perspective on how to view being inadequate. And and then even with that, as we talk about the moral things being and living a life and raising children, I think when we think of inadequacy and being inadequate, like I think that's when the Lord has an opportunity to use you, right? Because so often, even when, like, for me with this YouTube channel and feeling inadequate and not thinking that I qualify to be a proper YouTuber, whatever that is supposed to be or what that looks like, I think for me personally, even in feeling inadequate, it's like you said, it's in your heart. So you're going to do it. And I have a fear of not being obedient.
Yeah.
So obedience is better than sacrifice for me. So I think like that, I love that. I love that concept of looking at being inadequate that way. Because I told you she was amazing. She's amazing. So let's
hey, let me add this too. Also know that you're going to miss certain things, right? Because none of us knows everything. Right. And so even now with, I've graduated too from homeschool. I missed that, I missed this. But again, I'm thankful that we have such a communication that we can still talk. So even now I try to get with my adult children and we talk about things that maybe I missed or whatever the case may be. But so that's one thing, you're not going to be able to get everything into your child any more than everything is into you. That is not the whole point of it anyway, because if we did that, we'd be so prideful it would just be so hard to deal with this. But
Yeah.
sticking to what I've said before, that biblical worldview, teaching each subject, with Christ in mind, with what he's done in mind, having your child to work at this with all of his heart, ask to the Lord, and bringing God glory from that. And so God will take whatever our lack, God will take that, and God can bless regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so just don't try to do everything because it's not possible. And that would be totally
Mm-hmm.
frustrating.
Yes, I totally agree, and I did a video on that too, about the teaching from home and giving parents tips about teaching from home and letting them know we're not going to do the job perfectly. The
Mm-hmm.
teacher has all the plans, and they went to school for this, and they know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what is supposed to be taught and how it's supposed to be taught. So I think that that's something that's important to understand, because I don't know why we as parents, and I know particularly mothers, we are so hard on ourselves when it comes to making sure that we teach or tell our kids or everything. And when we fall short, then, we're so doubly hard on ourselves. I know
Right.
I told my kids and I've told my husband, I'm like, nobody can be harder on me than I'm hard on me.
Right.
You can't beat me up better than I can beat me up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's something that other moms and other parents need to know, that they are not by themselves when
Right.
it comes to that. Like it doesn't matter whether you choose to stay at home, whether you choose to go to work, or whatever the case may be, especially that mommy guilt, it gets you, and
Right.
you feel bad either way. And
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about that, and because being a stay-at-home mom, that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
That's a completely nother subject in itself,
Right.
that we can have a conversation about, and about how it's not for everybody. And I think we have two different points of view on that I think we can come together and share with the people on what it was like for us with that. But as we continue to talk about this, I want to know what you would say to the parents who are not able to homeschool their kids, or have their kids teach from home during this time. What kind of advice would you give for them, so that they're not dealing with the guilt of putting, what the guilt that people tend to put on people during this time with making a hard decision? Because during
Mm-hmm.
this time, I just want to start out by saying, as I ask this question, one thing that I've said to parents when we end up having a conversation about whether or not their child is going to school, whether their child is being homeschooled, or whether their child is being taught from home, my statement is always the same. Good for you. You made a decision during this tough time, when it is put on us to make a tough decision. And so I
Right.
just want to know, what advice could you give to that parent who has to send their children to school?
Okay. So, I don't want to misunderstand. So I'm assuming because of the COVID situation,
Yes, due to
and they still
COVID.
have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, just to be very, very frank, and I'm going to be as open and honest as I can be, I am not a fan of public schools, period. So just to put
Mm-hmm.
that out there. But
Yes.
that being, because of, again, worldview reasons and things like that. But that being said, now, if a parent has to put their child into school, even right now, they're concerned about the COVID situation, it's probably not as bad as it is made out to be, especially not for students. But at the same time, if you're putting them, sending them back to school, then as best you can as a parent, when they come home, whatever time you guys designate as a family, you still talk to them, you still teach them, you still go back over this certain subject. Okay, what are you learning? Let's see the book, let's see the test, let's see this, and let's go back over this and really try to point them in the right direction. Now that takes a lot of time to do that, but that's the best thing you can do. So if someone feels that they have to go ahead and send them, then that's where they are at, at that time. Again, that wasn't my choice. My choice was, well, I'm going to do without certain things, and I've did without a lot. We've done without a lot, so I can homeschool or send our kids to Christian school. So those were very purposeful decisions, but each person has to make that determination as to, okay, well, I know what I'm putting my kids into, and I am responsible before, and I'm speaking to Christians. I'm responsible before the Lord in this area. So that's the best as I can say it and still remain honest, because I'm just not, I am not a fan of public schools.
No, and that's what I love about, us being able to conversate and having dialogue, because I think so often that people assume that, a lot of people are just like-minded when it comes to different things, especially believers. And I appreciate you, and I love being able to have conversations and have open and honest conversations with you about raising our children, about different things like that, even though some of the way that we think about things may be different. And so I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking your time out of your day and sitting here and chatting with us on Tiffani's Take. I can't wait to have you back again to get into detail about some of the curriculum that you use as a homeschooling teacher with your children. And it was wonderful having you here. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for doing this.
Having me. Thank you for having me. It was a blessing.
Awesome. You guys, well, that wraps it up for us today. I am Tiffani. We're here with Pat Smith, and this is Tiffani's Take.